I have to say, when considering this story and the anniversary that is upon us today, I was thinking back to a year ago when we heard lots of criticism coming from Western leaders about China's approach in Hong Kong and lots of promises to support opposition voices. Do you think the West has fallen short on those promises, and to what extent has it emboldened Xi Jinping?
Well, I think it's only fallen short in as much as if anybody really thought the West could do anything. And I don't think they could do anything. And I think we're seeing that at the moment. That there's already PLA troops downtown Hong Kong. Hong Kong, the sovereignty has returned to China. There's really few things that the US and other Western countries can do, and the UK, of course, other than sanctioning Chinese officials. And that's a pretty wet rag if you want to influence what happens on the ground in Hong Kong. So, yes, it might fall short, but I think it was always going to fall short.
And the reason I ask you whether or not it has emboldened the leadership in Beijing, particularly Xi Jinping, is that many are wondering, what could be next in terms of more posturing towards Taiwan and what we could hear from Beijing on those lines. And what is your expectation, at least in the near term?
Look, to be quite frank, in the near term, I don't expect anything dramatic on Taiwan. I know there's a lot of chatter about this at the moment. Xi Jinping has a very full domestic agenda. July, the 100th anniversary of the Communist Party, the Winter Olympics in Beijing next year, the once every 5 years Congress, the Communist Party at the end of next year. I think that's his focus. The idea that there's going to be dramatic movements on Taiwan, short of course, the Taiwanese government doing something themselves, which I don't think they will. So I think, Hong Kong and Taiwan are very different. You can't replicate what China is doing in Hong Kong and Taiwan very easily. The showdown over Taiwan, I think, is some years off.
Richard, I do want to go back to that story. Where does the whole issue of U.S.-China relations stand right now? Because it seems like that whole blow hot and cold approach continues with what the Biden administration has done overnight in issuing a new red list for companies in China. What's your own sense on the way forward here?
Well, I think the way forward is going to be tense and very rocky. The two sides haven't really engaged at a top level in any sustained political dialogue. We had a meeting in Alaska that was pretty raucous. There's been talks between their different trade envoys. There's been talks between their climate envoys, but there's been no real top of government coming together at all. Now, sooner or later, that's going to have to happen. In other words, Xi Jinping and Joe Biden or their respective foreign ministers will have to sort of get involved in a dialogue. But I think the US is trying to show that it's not in a hurry. Mr. Biden will meet Mr. Putin before he meets Mr. Xi face to face. The US thinks it's late to this game. They don't want to close off any options. They're not looking for an off-ramp in terms of reducing tensions with China. So we can expect them to stay at a pretty high level.
Do you expect the U.S. to ratchet up a Trump-era narrative on China, or not quite? Would it be their own version?
No, I think there's a lot of Trump-era policies in there, but there's not a Trump-level sort of chaos surrounding them. So in that respect, Biden is a much more formidable and focused adversary because, Trump did throw the Chinese off balance, but after a while they got used to that. They learned how to handle that. Mr. Biden's administration, if it stays focused and organized, can perhaps put a lot more pressure on China. It can bring its allies along. Trump didn't do that. So in that respect, it's a different ballgame. But of course, China is growing in power as well. So we're moving into a new era, I think, of a permanent state of tension and maneuvering around that.